I would like to introduce the Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice Lifetime Achievement Award and tell you a little bit about that. The award is chosen by the Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice Board for someone who has played a significant role in WNPJ and has been a peace, justice, and sustainability activist for many years and has done inspiring movement work. Some of our previous winners were Sam Day in 2000, Clarence Kalin and Frank Zedler, 2002, Jim Missy, 2003, Nan Cheney and Midge Miller, 2004, Maureen McDonald, 2005, George Paz Martin, 2006, John Lafarge, 2007, Julie Enslow and John Kinsman, 2008, Esther Hefner and Joe Elder in 2009, the Madison Raging Grannies, woohoo, in 2010, Fred Reiser, sorry if I'm butchering people's names, 2011, Reverend Joe and Joyce L. Wagner in 2012, Al Gagic in 2013, John Peck and Mary Beth Schlagheck, 2014, and Joyce Gwen, 2015. So thank you all to our previous winners. And now we'd like to have John Quinlan come up and present our 2016 award.
Thank you. Steve Braunginn was one of the original co-chairs and also one of the co-founders of the Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice back in 1991. And for many months preceding this amazing day that you'll see featured in the video that we'll be showing later, Steve and his co-chair Nan Cheney and Frank Boyle and a list that goes on and on, Midge Miller and other folks, many of them recognized by some of the other folks who've received this distinction, were a part of this, and something magical happened. And you'll, I think, be delighted to see the magical way in which Steve captures that. It was quite a day. Steve is somebody who wears many hats, and thank you for wearing one today. And, probably too many to mention here. I've known Steve for about 30 years now. I think I met Paul about a year earlier at the Fair Housing Council. We served on the local Rainbow Coalition. He's someone who's done amazing work on behalf of Jesse Jackson and the exciting multi-dimensional aspects of his run for office back when. And then through the years has just assumed so many different important community roles, probably most notable among them as president and CEO of the Urban League of Greater Madison. We also work together on the Study Circles and Race program that the City of Madison sponsored, and we're both volunteers at WORT, where Steve does a Thursday afternoon jazz show that is just amazing. And so again, so many different things to mention. I would be remiss if, and I'm sure he'll acknowledge this too, he's not a solo act, and members of his immediate family do some amazing things. His daughter Erica is in Columbus, Ohio today. She's someone who, while in Madison, among many other community roles, served on the Equal Opportunities Commission, and she's doing great social justice work as a consultant there. But here at the table, we have his wife, Jenny Braunginn. Jenny is a very accomplished social work professional who has done some amazing things while at the Verona School District. One of the things I'm especially proud of that she did is working with the Gay Straight Alliances and other projects there, but on many dimensions, making that place a very welcoming place, and that's extended into the community. Matthew Braunginn, their son, is here, and Matthew is someone more recently, as you probably heard, in terms of his activism on Young, Gifted, and Black Lives Matter, his column that he produces at Madison365.com. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, that's for sure. And last and not least, I would be remiss as the son of an identical twin not to acknowledge someone else here at the table. The Honorable Paul Higginbotham is here, recently retired as a judge.
Not
yet? Oh, I'm sorry.
At the end of next July.
Next July, okay. I thought when you said, when you welcomed Everett, I was, okay. Sorry about that.
Push me out.
No. No need too long for that. There is so much more that could be said. Jenny actually has to get back to duties at the School of Social Work, so we want to make sure that Steve has plenty of time to speak today. But one other thing, We won't embarrass them too much by breaking into song, since we got limited time, but in call and response format, I ask you to give both Steve and Paul a happy birthday greeting since it was yesterday. So, happy birthday, Paul and Steve. Happy birthday, Paul and Steve. And with that, I present to you the Lifetime Achievement Award winner for the Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice, Steve Braunginn.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome, sir.
Hey, can we take a picture of you?
It's called the football look.
One more time, let's congratulate and get our award.
Well, in my 20-page speech, I'll try to boil it down to about 5. No, in all realistic, I am truly humbled. When I received a call for this, I asked why. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I've been gone from the field, so to speak, out of the trenches for a number of years now, and has to do with health. And yet I also realize, I spend a lot of time on Facebook, for those of you who do. You see my face on there, and I keep on pushing and teaching, because I don't have to say something. Sometimes all it takes is the photo and just a few words from that photo to get across the message. The intent for the Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice really came out of the Gulf War. And it was at that time that Dave Clarenbach, Alan Ruff, and I mean a whole bunch of us were planning demonstrations in Madison to deal with the impending war that was before us, as Daddy Bush decided to draw his line in the sand. And I'm glad he's good in drawing, but that was just stick people. However, on a serious side, it was a blow to a peacemaker, because the day that he did it was on the birthday of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And that was an assault. And I recall the demonstration that we had, the protest celebration, if you will, at the City County building the night before the bombing began. And it was the biggest demonstration that we had, and we had a whole panel full of people talking. But what was most important was that there were people who came out from all kinds of places in the area to come together. And it was a very diverse group. Dora Zuniga, at that time from Centro Hispano, she and I did a lot of work on dealing with the issue of people of color on the front lines. Because after all, people of color could not go to higher education without an ROTC scholarship, because they didn't have the money. And so that's what happened. That's what happened with a lot of people. Or they simply went into the military because they didn't have any money. And so where did they end up? They ended up on the front lines, and they were fatalities in more than one way. I am very humbled, and I accept this nomination, not really more on my behalf, but more so on the partner that's not here. My dear friend, Nan Cheney was a remarkable person. We spent many hours together in Frank's office, in the evenings in particular, whole lots of hours. And we had other volunteers, but Nan and I sort of became attached at the hip. And the biggest thing was putting together this event that took place at the State Assembly. And we weren't expecting a whole lot. And then everybody came. The whole state showed up. And we said, my God gracious, we've got something going here. It's a movement. And so, a number of people came together and we developed the name, the Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice. We really did spend some time trying to figure out that name. Because what are we for? Not against. It is about what we are for. Because that's the stand we take, is what we are for. We're for peace, we're for justice, economic justice, environmental justice. We're for justice. Jesse Jackson back in 84 and 88, one of the major phrases he would talk about was economic justice and environmental justice. And that's how we came about the name. And it was quite a thing to do with the lovely Nan Cheney. I loved her so much, and still do. Think of her often. Let me get through this real quickly. The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. spoke before an audience of the NAACP in the early 1960s. It was their national conference, and he said this, that true peace is not merely the absence of tension, but is the presence of justice. Of justice. And I felt that way when we were protesting that invasion. It was supporting peace and justice. Not being anti-war, but being for something. Because there was so much of, we're against the war, anti-war. It's just like, this is not an anti-war movement. This is a peace effort. And so, for the people who are at Standing Rock, they are not protesters. They are protectors.
Yes.
They are protectors of the peace of the land, the water, the very blood that keeps us alive. And if it's destroyed, we die. Fish die. Everything dies. And we have to remember those very same people are the people at one time were the targets for genocide. And they now stand proudly in thousands at one time standing together in the largest gathering ever of indigenous peoples in this country. And that is something that we should be proud about. And we should think about more so as we are trying to stretch our vision to whom do we pull in? Who do we gather to be a part of who we are? John was so kind to mention Matthew, but I mention Matthew not because he's our son and I love him, but this cat is bad, Jack. And it does remind me a little bit of myself when I was that age, maybe even now, and has a way of getting in somebody's face and telling them the truth. Like Bayard Rustin, speak truth to power. And that's what we are about. But I mention Matthew because as I look at so many of us with gray hair, we need to, and you know this, to revitalize by drawing in more young people, and more young people from a broader range from organizations that are about dealing with the issue of racism in our country. And given all the things that have been going on in this election, heavens knows what's going to happen over the next 4 years. Honestly. And I will say this, when Hillary gets elected, she is going to have a hell of a 4-year period. Because this country is angry and it's hurting. And it's hurting because of millions of people who decide that it's okay to hate. And they speak out with hate. And they strike out with hate. And we need to be a force for peace, love, and justice. So as this group is growing, and by the way, that is something that Jenny and I talk about, because it's something that we do, and that is, I mean, everybody's heard about Johnny Appleseed, right? It's kind of a stupid story. All right, I grew up in Ohio in my young formative years, and that was a whole big thing because Johnny Appleseed went through Ohio planting apple trees. But what we are about is planting the seed, pouring a little water on it, fertilizing it, watching it grow, and say, okay, what's next? And move on to the next challenge. And so we don't stay too long with something that we've been a part of. We just make sure it's moving. And it's been moving for 25 years, and boy, I felt so good when I heard about this, and I went, daggone it, it's cooking. So we did some very good fertilizing. And so was Donald Trump. I'm sorry. I had to say that, man. Yes. He does it in a very peaceful way. I want to thank you again. And it really does mean a great deal. I don't know why I was having such a hard time trying to get a grasp on why me, why now. But it's good to to help me to recall what I have done over the many years. There are so many groups I've been a part of, and so many movements, and so many this and that. I can't recall them. And that's a problem if somebody wants to ask me to write a book. But this organization was one that we poured our hearts into because we knew we needed to make it happen. Your vision is to rebuild, flourish it, pour more fertilizer into this thing, reach out to more people who are acting on behalf of peace and justice in so many organizations, beyond faith communities, local communities. I just released something on Facebook about that issue of democracy being that which grows from the people up, not from the top down. And this is what this organization is about. Thank you, and I hope I didn't bore you. And you just keep on keeping on, as we say. You just hang in there. And in these days, because of my health, I don't do meetings. But you are with me. You're always with me. I always think about WNPJ. And I will make sure that you remain alive. We remain alive. I am a member, after all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you so much. So now we'll have some time to continue celebrating Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice, and to Steve, before he goes, to thank you.